everyone, welcome to Democrafting the Future. You're here with me, Corinne, and Saray, and we're here at the Nordic Demographic Symposium at Hinsgau Slot in Middelfart, Denmark. We are about to show you some video interviews that we did with some of the guests here, and we're really excited to show you what we did. You just want to start by introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Peter Fallesen. I'm a research professor at the Rockwell Foundation and a senior researcher at the Swedish Institute for Social Research, and by accident the president of the Danish Demographic Society.
And what led you to demography?
A Swedish professor called Gunnar Andersen, who 10 years ago needed someone to give him Danish fertility numbers, and I had a free couple of days. But I'd been doing demographic methods for non-demographic subjects for a while, cumulative risk of ever going into foster care for children and so on, but kind of mainstream demography only happened for me because I was doing a postdoc in Sweden and he needed someone to pull some numbers, and then one thing led to another, and now I'm a fertility researcher.
That sounds interesting.
How long have you been part of the Rockwell Foundation?
Almost 20 years.
Wow.
I started as a student research assistant in 2006.
And you have a background in sociology prior?
Yeah, sociology, and my methods background is in economics.
Okay. Amazing.
So you mentioned that you are currently a fertility demographer, and what are you more interested in fertility?
So can you repeat it?
Yeah, what are you more interested in fertility? What do you like? What are your current projects?
So, I think every other Nordic person, I'm looking into fertility decline. We're trying to understand. I think the pivotal thing to understand right now is: are people not having children because they don't want them, or are they not having children because the opportunity structures in a way where they can't have them, either because they don't think they can afford them, they don't have a partner to have them with? So, what are these actual barriers, or are this just a change in societal norms and approaches to culture values around having children? And given we have this very strong social gradient in Denmark, and given that my hunch is more about barriers than about anything else, but it's still a hunch and something we're kind of looking into.
And what, I guess, would you say is the greatest barrier to people? Is it economics? Is it the state of the world? Is it a combination of everything? I
think you can boil it down to a sentence that Bill Clinton's one of his communication folks said during his first presidential run, which is, "It's the economy, stupid." But I think this is end of the day, about money or resources in a broad understanding of that word. It is not just what's in your bank account, it's also the size of your house and the availability of housing. Denmark are increasingly seeing that people who are in the fertile ages are not owning their own houses more and more. And we know from prior research that if you own a house and the value of that house increases, your fertility rate is actually going up. While if you're renting in an area where prices are going up, so your apartment is going to be either going to be more expensive or it's going to be harder to move to something larger, your fertility rate goes down.
So you talked about before in your keynote about the communication. So how would you communicate your conclusions and the results to the broader public to understand this kind of underlying fertility causes or causes of declining fertility?
So our strategy is very much kind of two-pronged. We have a good relationship with a number of journalists who write on the subject in different newspapers, and I'm lucky enough to at the main place I work, the Rockwell Foundation. We have a very, 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 very good communications team. So they basically match our work with journalists who would be interested in writing about it or covering it in other media. And then we also have a whole sideline communication strategy of it's actually just next on the slides that we write books. We do a lot of social media. We used to do a lot on what I would still call Twitter, but now more moved into doing it on LinkedIn. But I say we, but it's essentially our very good communications team. I just kind of show up when I have to be a talking head.
I have one more question. You mentioned education and that it changes over time. Can you talk a little bit more about it? What it means, like that we have such an increase of, especially women in education and in higher education now, and what consequences it has to the fertility rate?
So there's two elements to it. One is that people normally wait to start having children until they kind of finish school and university, get the first job, and so on. So the longer the education you take, the further along the life course you are before you're going to start having children. So we do see, for those, especially women with the longest educations, that they have a more kind of compressed distribution of ages of where they have children. They start later, but they also they get them out of the way pretty quickly. They still have a lot relatively speaking. But there's another thing here that's kind of playing out underneath all of this. That is, women are getting education at a much higher rate than men are. So that does affect the marriage markets. So what's actually happening is women with long educations still kind of mainly find partners who also themselves with long educations. And that has to do with some of that is preference, but it's the people you meet. Like we end up forming relationships with the people we meet at school or at work or at university and so on. And then you have a surplus of women with long educations that couldn't find a partner with a long education because they've already found. They then tend to find the most successful of those with like vocational trainings and so on. So you have this kind of filtering down, and then in the end you're left with people who tend to have short education, both men and women, who can't really find a partner either because they don't want the prospect that's there and they're not living in the same places. So there's this kind of double effect of both kind of fertility delay, but also changes into who people can find to have children with.
I think right now in media it's also very presented as the male loneliness epidemic.
Yeah. We've talked about that a lot, about the male loneliness epidemic, just within our group.
Yeah, but and some of that is true. I think there's also, like, we know men are worse at making friends. We also I tend to say men are a bit slow. Like, we're really bad at going to the doctor. We're bad at making friends. We're bad at maintaining relationships. Women often end up playing the role of the caregiver and also the care kind of facilitator. And if there's no woman in your life, because I do think this is socially constructed. It's not from birth, but if there's no woman in your life, then a lot of men haven't learned to facilitate that for themselves.
That's super interesting, and I bet that there's like future research
there is. Also because they have poor health. They have they have not great lives. So there is a lot of room for increasing their life quality as well. And I think some of this probably also starts with how we are raising children, in what way we're gendering, the way we're rearing them. But some of it is also meant for themselves to start going to the freaking doctor because it is free.
Also, I think that maybe this is controversial, but it's kind of humans' way of natural selection. Like, women want partners who can take care of themselves, then take care of offspring with the women. Like, it's science.
I think it's natural selection if we agree that it's the mechanism that we have called natural selection.
Yeah.
This is not by
no, it's not by biology. Yeah.
We are the least natural of all beings in the world.
And I was also thinking that what you are mentioning now aligns also with what Gesta Esping Andersen had yesterday in his lecture about the fertility puzzling and how probably low-educated, unskilled men affect the partnership and the marriage market.
Yeah, but also I think at the end of the day we come back to money.
Yeah.
Because if you, especially, and there's some signs that essentially the labor market structurally changed following the years of the Great Recession. So those kind of jobs that was available prior to the Great Recession to people with short educations, there's fewer of those and they're paid less well.
Yeah.
So I did some work on this a couple of years ago with some colleagues, and men, like 25-year-old men today with a like primary level of education, are earning less in absolute value than the same man in 2007, whereas everyone else are earning more than that. Like everyone is seeing real wage growth, but there is this bottom part of the distribution who has short educations, and they are actually seeing their financial and job prospects worsen.
Yeah.
This brings down also to the longevity, right, etc. So I think it's a very broad topic, and especially with this group of men, there is like a gap for future research that could potentially like explain a lot of this ambiguity. But unfortunately, I think we need to wrap things up. Since you have biggest schedule. Any last question?
I had one last question, kind of, and then we can wrap it up a bit. I guess, how do we fix that? Like, how can we can't go and make men want to go to the doctor, want to get education. Like, I don't know how on a societal level, because there's no policy that can fix that.
But, I mean, there's, I think...
Other than promoting education, making it seem like a better option,
yeah, I think that's the long-term goal, right? That is finding a way to sort that out, and I have no good ideas, but I have ideas on the other things.
Yeah.
Because, no, but I mean, women have regular checkups due to female anatomy that are not there for men, right? But like we do breast cancer screenings, we should probably do like early prostate cancer screenings. And we started doing that in Denmark. The problem is men are very bad at showing up to them because they don't want a finger up their bum.
Right.
But there is certain things built into the healthcare system around the female anatomy that ensures that women regularly see a doctor.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite kind of weird examples is that people with HIV in Denmark tend to live longer than people without HIV if they're not intravenous drug users. And that is because, first of all, we've gotten very good at treating HIV. But also, they go to the doctor quite a lot because they get monitored. So every other thing that might be there, high blood pressure, other issues, they get caught in time.
Yeah, I think I would agree, especially with the early prostate screenings, because especially we are seeing a lot of more young people having colon cancer, those kind of things, and it's a lot easier to catch when you're... It's
very treatable if you catch it early.
Exactly, exactly. But again, it's how do you make them go when they don't want to do the procedure? That's the question, I think. And it's not solvable.
I have one final question, and that's what is your favorite fun fact about demography, or what is like the one fact you like to talk about that is interesting for you and you think other people might also think is interesting?
I think it's fun. I cannot speak for the people that I talk to, but how people misunderstand what a life expectancy and total fertility rate is, what they are. Like this, people think that this is how long I'm going to live. Like, no, it's the current measure of like mortality dynamics, and the same fertility rate. Like this is, sure, fertility rate can go down because we stop having kids, but it can also just go down because we start having them later. And getting those dynamics across is very difficult, but it's also very fun because you can kind of getting people to understand that these measures that they hear on the thing they don't know, but getting that insight to them, I find is. I teach fertility at the Public Health Department in Copenhagen. That's kind of always the thing I like that. And then the impact that the pill had on Danish age at first birth and fertility rate. You can literally see it in the data. You can just see this is where the pill came, and then age at first birth just jumps, and the fertility rate just... That, I think, that's also a very fun fact.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was 3 facts.
No, that's good.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a really amazing talk. Thank you for giving us the time. I know you're very busy this week.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.